So before I get into the August 17th, 2026 Mayor and Council recap, I do want to talk about something that you may have seen on the live stream, and that was Councilwoman Haley. She was very upset that the word feral was used to describe campers at the library. And I want to make it clear, it was the counselors who used that term. You know, the same counselors that moments before she was sitting there saying, hey, they did a wonderful job, they're amazing. Unfortunately, it was the counselors who were actually doing their job and doing their work, who were watching the kids, as opposed to the counselors who were sitting in the corner talking about making TikToks. The ones who, when I said, hey, I need a counselor, I need help over here, just ignored me. But yeah, it was the counselors who said that. And I think that maybe some additional training might be needed. And maybe you need to be a little bit more in touch about what is going on. And I'm going to talk about that situation at the end of my video. I want to talk about everything else that happens, but I do feel that it does need to be addressed. So Ordinance 2546, basically if you're doing work on a property and it is more than, well, they changed it to $100,000 for the exterior, $25,000 for the interior for commercial, and $50,000 for the exterior, and now $25,000 for the interior. You have to get it approved, so they up those amounts. Everybody voted yes on it, with the exception of Councilman Raimondo, who abstained. Councilman Jafar was not there today, so obviously he couldn't vote. The next four ordinances were all approved unanimously. So Ordinance 2547 increases the clothing allowance for the volunteer fire department. Ordinance 2548 removes the handicap space in front of residents. Another one was being added at the corner of Maple and Broad. I think that might just be moved because there's one there now. Ordinance 2549 was to appropriate the $600,000 for the community center improvements. That money is coming from federal grants. That's the whole one with the big check, you know, that they took pictures of a while back. To my knowledge, that $600,000 has not hit our account yet, so hopefully it'll come soon, because we do need to make those improvements. And yeah. Ordinance 2550 was to appropriate $2.5 million for the traffic safety improvement projects and road safety and congestion improvements at various locations, and the money is coming from what I believe is 2 different grants for that. Resolution, so now we're starting the consent agenda. Everybody voted yes on the consent agenda with the exception of Councilman Rue. He voted no. Resolution 189, 2026 was to stripe the American Legion parking lot in exchange for letting the borough use it for town events if it's available. Resolution 190, 2026 was to clear the uncashed checks, or anything that's been sitting there for over a year, and it was only 4 checks totaling $531.48. Resolution 191, 2026 was the borough wants a cloud-based government management system. They put out a bid. The contract is being awarded to Edmunds Government Tech in the amount of a one-time implementation fee of $26,000, and then it's going to be $28,650 for the annual term. Resolution 192, 2026, the borough needs engineering design services for the NJDOT grant that we got for Ray Avenue. They awarded it to Neglia in the amount of $76,182, and that's going to be paid for by the grants. Resolution 193, 2026, the borough needs engineering design services for the CDBG roadway improvement grant that they got from Morse Avenue. They awarded it to Neglia Engineering in the amount of $57,816, which will be paid for by the grants as well. Then Resolution 194, 2026 basically allows the borough clerk to put out bids, to advertise to get bids for those 2 grants that were just mentioned. Resolution 195, 2026, a resident repaid their tax lien. As I explained before, if they repay their tax lien, then the borough has to pay out whoever purchased that lien. So that's all that happened there. Resolution 196, 2026 was pulled. So basically what happened was they hired a playground counselor, a camp counselor, whatever you want to call it, and it was backdated to July 20th. So at some point, this person was a CIT, and they became a full counselor, and there was no meeting in between, so they couldn't vote on it. That's why it was backdated. I don't know if somebody quit the job, if the job was never filled to start with. I don't know the details of that, but they had become, somebody asked me, why didn't they just say, okay, when you become this age, you'll get the job? Maybe they thought they were going to fill it with someone else. I don't know the details of it, but I can explain why it was backdated. Resolution 197 2026 was the opioid settlement grant for $7,058.29. Basically, that goes to LEAD, which is, what we used to call DARE. It's money that goes to drug awareness education, and there are very specific guidelines on how that money can be used. Resolution 198 2026 that was also pulled. So basically there was an overpayment made. I don't know if the person made an overpayment, I don't know if their bank made an overpayment, but they overpaid their property taxes. And in the first paragraph it says, hey, we're going to apply that to future taxes, and then at the end it said, okay, we're going to send them a check. So Councilman Martucci pulled it because he just wants to make sure that we're not reimbursing them twice. Resolution 199 2026, we needed an engineer for the preparation of phase 1 of the watershed improvement plan. It was awarded to Neglia Engineering. The amount of $32,586 was broken into 2 payments from different accounts. I don't believe any of that was grant money, but I am not positive. I did get up and ask about that in my comments, but it was not answered. Resolution number 2026 or 200 2026 was to increase the rate for class 1 specials, and also the yearly rate for the SLEO3s, which are the special officers who are in the schools. So as I talked about in one of the Board of Ed meeting recaps, instead of the Board of Ed trying to, hire cops, they contract with the town so that the town hires the specials and does their training and makes sure that everything's the way it should be. Then the next 2 resolutions, 201 2026 was to appoint 21 crossing guards for the 26-27 school year. Resolution 202 2026 was for 4 SLEOs 3s, and that was for the upcoming school year as well. Then resolution 2003 2026 or 203 2026 was a property was demolished and the tax collector didn't adjust it. So once the building is no longer there, it should be a lower amount. That didn't happen, so they were adjusting Q3 and Q4 of this year to make up for the charge or the fact that they were overbuilt prior to that. And then there were the warrants in the amount of $4,846,238.47, and that passed unanimously. So I'm going to read the comments from all the people up on the dais, and then I'm going to talk about all of the public comments, and then I'm going to get into my comment on the library situation. So there was Cone with the Cop that was happening at Dairy Queen while we were at the mayor and council meeting. September 12th, they're going to have the food truck that's going to be run by the RBAO. September 11th, they're going to have a 9/11 memorial at 8:30 that happens every year. RBAO is going to have clothing ceremonies where they're going to celebrate the girls who won their softball divisions. There's poolside story time. September 25th, the American Legion is going to do a barbecue for town employees. The American Legion is still around. Gunny was there. They are trying to rebuild. He did ask the mayor and council for help to make it a historic site, I believe. So, if you are a veteran, stop down. Looking for great things from them in the future. Okay. I don't know I'm going to get this completely right. From what I understand, PSE&G, that site has been purchased by another company. I'm not sure if it's that other company or the state, but somebody wants to come in and they want to put in batteries so that it costs less for the electricity at peak hours. And the mayor and council is going to bring them into a meeting so that whoever this company is, whoever is, I guess, going to be making that decision. So, it would kind of be, my understanding is like a question and answer. If you have questions, that would be the time to come and ask them about it. Don't ask me questions about it. I obviously don't know that much. But the date was not set. When I hear the date about that, I will share it. Then there was a lot of conversation about taxes. So Councilman Rue, who did vote no to the tax increase, said we really need to think about our taxpayers. Somebody reached out to them. Their taxes increased by $700. Councilwoman Camp said she's also worried about taxes. If you're worried about it or you have concerns, to give her a call. Then Councilman Martucci said, no one wants taxes to go up, but of the $700 only, and this number might not be completely accurate, but something like $168 of it would be going to the municipality. The rest, the majority of it, obviously goes to the Board of Ed, the county, and the library. I'm going to share, maybe tomorrow I'll put it up. I have a real estate video where I talk about how the taxes get broke down, and I use Richfield and Fair Lawn as my examples, so I can show that in more detail. Then the mayor did say, hey, when you're talking about what happened last year and how things were managed last year, everybody, voted with the exception of Councilman Jafar, who wasn't there. Everybody voted, and it passed unanimously. So, it's not one side or the other. Then Councilman Martucci talked about a tree meeting because they want to change the tree ordinance. There were comments online about trees coming down, so I guess 24 tree requests were made to come down. They had an independent arborist look at them. 6 or 7 were unhealthy, so that's what came down. Day Avenue is paved, and the youth center is getting a new sign. While this was not discussed, the youth center also got a skee ball machine. They had a very good year at the carnival, so they're making improvements and sprucing that up a little bit. So now I'm going to get into the public comments. So the first public comment was, if you looked at the warrants list, it talks about replacing 3 stolen checks. So the question is, where were they stolen from? So the mayor was like, I'm not really sure. Maybe it was from the mail. That is something that does happen. And then Councilman Martucci said, well, I don't know. When I was working at camp, somebody signed for my check and stole it from Borough Hall. So Frank Alineo is not there at the moment. He is on vacation. When he comes back, they're hoping to get answers from that. It was also mentioned, a couple people brought this up, but it was also stated, well, maybe it's not a check, it might be a PO. So we don't know if it was a check or a PO, but something happened, and once I have that answer, I'll share it with you. Another person got up and said, hey, what is happening on September 26th for the 250? I saw the save the date. It's my birthday weekend. I moved my plans because I want to celebrate with the town. Can you tell me what I moved my plans for? She did not get an answer. Okay, so full fairness, it was my sister. And then she said, I heard you talking about the camp going to the library. And my suggestion is just maybe go before or after they're open to, the normal town people. And here are some suggestions. They were a little rowdy. They were kind of out of control. And it was uncomfortable for other people who were there. This is a suggestion, maybe other solutions you can come up with in the future. And I will get into what my comments were. Then somebody asked for an update on the sale of Borough Hall. We did not get an update on that. They asked about the roof repair. There was no update on that. And the American Legion, wants to make, I guess, a landmark. So I guess a landmark is, I apologize, maybe not historical. It is, I think I said historical before. I meant to say landmark is what he asked for. So now I'm going to get into my comments. And I originally had every intention of getting up and saying, thank you for setting up the Motor Vehicle Commission and Passport Day. It was lovely. I saw so many people come out from town for the motor vehicles. There was 15 spots. Or I'm sorry, there were 4 spots every 15 minutes, and it was completely booked within 24 hours. It was amazing. All really positive comments that I had. I wanted to ask about the watershed. What was this? What does it entail? Just because I didn't fully understand. And I was going to ask about the checks. I was a little taken back because when my sister got up and said, the kids were misbehaved at the library. Here are some suggestions you could do just so it's more comfortable for everybody. And we were told and we heard, by the staff who was there that we come to the library because it's cooler. Maybe that's the case, maybe it's not. Maybe that was the point of misinformation that was being said. But to hear, hey, that's misinformation. We were trying to, we got them library cards, everything was okay. And to try to downplay the fact that the kids weren't completely out of control was very frustrating for me because I was there and I saw it. I saw the counselors or some of the counselors struggling. I saw other counselors completely checked out. I saw library staff, and I'm actually remaking this video because no good deed, goes unpunished. And I want to make sure that people truly understand what happened. The library staff was called the week of and asked, "Hey, can we come? Can we come?" And they were trying to be helpful. They were trying to work with the town. They didn't want to be the bad guys. They wanted, yeah, we'll work with you. They're amazing, big-hearted people. And they said, sure, come. And the first time the camp came, they there was the female director, and she came in and they read a book, and then the kids went and played. And it is my understanding from multiple people, I first heard it from other people who were at the library, other patrons, and I asked the library staff, like, hey, what happened? I heard they were a little out of control. That after the book was read, the kids were playing roughly, to put it politely. The second time was just before the World's Cup. And I had said to Laurel, my sister was there the first time that the kids came, and I had said to Laurel, I would like to do, some sort of art project for the World Cup. Can I do that because the library has different programs? And she goes, I could really use help if you want to come when the camp is coming, because there's a lot of them. They bring like 50 kids at once. And just so you're aware, it's not like, hey, it's like 50 first graders. It's like 50 kids of all different ages. So I think the ages ranged from like 5 years old to third or fourth grade. So it was a big age group. It was, boys and girls. It was a lot. And I said, yeah, no problem. Like, I'd love to help out. So I come down to volunteer. Like I said, my sister volunteers a lot at the library. And there are also other volunteers that come as well. There were teen volunteers who were reading to the kids separately, not during this time, but they would read during story time and stuff like that, also help clean up. So she actually had them scheduled to come afterwards to help clean up because, there was a significant mess that was left. And when I was coming, and I came early, and Laurel, is a brand new librarian who is amazing, and she's awesome. And Maria, who is the library director, is wonderful. And they were trying to be helpful. And I want this to be known because I don't want it to sound like I'm, going after our library, because they were put in a position, hey, can we come? And, they didn't want to say no, and they didn't want to be rude. However, a situation was created by having the camp come. So I want to be clear about that, and that's why I'm remaking this video. So I'm coming over, and I know that, Laurel's going to be on lunch break because kids aren't supposed to be there for about 45 minutes. And as I'm coming over, I see Officer Greg out there, and he's crossing them, and I see the camp coming. And I'm like, hey, they're coming now. So the plan was that she was going to, the counselor, the camp director was going to bring them into the room. They were going to sit everybody down, and to kind of course correct from what happened before, they were going to have a discussion of, these are the library rules. You can't take a book out if you don't have a library card. I was told that the applications for library cards were sent home, and the camp said, oh no, we can't send them out. Don't know if that is true or not, but that is what I was told. I do know that while I was there, kids were trying to take out books without a library card. But more importantly, because they showed up 45 minutes early, when they walked in, Laurel obviously was not there. She was on her lunch. And they literally walked in and just spread out. So it's not like they walked in, they sat down, and they were ready for something. They just went and they started, playing, doing things, running, and there were relays going on. Items were being thrown. Chairs were upside down. There were kids who, were screaming. The counselors are like, hey, stop, like literally, sit in the chair right, stop flipping it upside down. At one point, there was questions of whether or not a couch was broken. I personally watched a globe get broken. We were able to fix the globe, but the globe was broken. I saw multiple items, not just the Connect 4, but multiple items being thrown. However, I do want to say that there were some kids who were sitting there and politely coloring. There were 3 girls. I want to say there were about 50, maybe just under 50. So I'm not sure if it was like 45 or 48 kids ranging in ages from 5 to about 4th or 5th grade. And there were about 3 of them, 3 girls who were reading. And I'm sorry, there were 4 girls who were reading. And my sister was over there, talking to them about the books. There was a group of girls who they were working, they were playing together, and they were, playing hand games, and one of them had a scab on her knee, and she wasn't doing anything wrong, but she started bleeding. And it was a little upsetting that they didn't have a Band-Aid for her, you know? So here's the librarian trying to kind of keep everything together, all the rooms. There were some rooms that didn't have a counselor in it, you know, that back room, the music room. The kids were in there by themselves. You know, she's saying, hey, here's a Band-Aid because somebody's bleeding. You know, there was a little girl who was like, hey, I want to go get a drink of water. And I'm not a quiet person. I'm like, I need a counselor. I need a counselor. I need a counselor. No one was responding. So finally I got the head counselor to basically tell one of his employees to go do their job. Now, like I said, there were some counselors who were working very hard. They were sitting there, they were coloring with the kids, they were doing different things with them, and I definitely think that there was frustration on their part, because that work was not being divided equally, right? And I want to make that clear. However, it wasn't just in that moment, right? So when they left the library, it was very awkward. So they were there, you know, for about an hour. They came. There was a parent who, when I said, hey, they're coming, took her kid and booked it. There were other parents who came in, just saw what was happening, left immediately. I saw this happen with 2 parents the day that I was there. It was very awkward. Adult patrons were like, what is happening? That's why we were asking after the first time, because it was craziness. The kids were screaming. They were just doing things that you wouldn't even do at recess, let alone in a library. And furthermore, that behavior seemed to be the behavior that every time I saw them, and I did not interact with them a lot, but that's constantly what I saw. So I went down to the community center because I was trying to book something, and, you know, the one time older people were being, you know, run into. Another time went there a second time, and I couldn't find the person who's in charge. And there were all these kids and teens in there, and I'm like, you know, where's the person supposed to be running, you know, the community center? And she's in there trying to help, you know, with the movie or whatever. And I go in, and here is the director on a bullhorn. She is literally on a bullhorn, screaming at the top of her lungs. And I'm watching kids run around her. Like, literally, they're running everywhere, they're screaming. I'm in there like 5 minutes, and I can't find Pilar. So I go up to her, and I'm like, where's Pilar? I need to do something. And she's like, well, you can't be in here. I'm like, no problem. I don't want to be in here, but I've been here 5 minutes, and you don't know. Because you couldn't hear, you couldn't see, you can't tell who's where and in what place. You can't even tell me where Pilar is for her to come help me. You know, that's why I'm in here in the first place. And I think that's the issue, right? Is that because that's how, you know, the behavior was allowed to be, it became a problem when they went to the library, because that's what the expectation was, that was okay. Now, I don't care what they do in the community center. I mean, it was frustrating for me that, you know, somebody had to go basically help everything that is happening there. But I don't care what they do in the community center. I was told that the reason the community, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard it more than once. It was asked, but an answer was not given today, that the reason the community center couldn't be used as a cooling station later on after the July 4th weekend was because of the camp. Not sure if that's true. However, it was out of control. And that is not an overstatement, that is not an exaggeration. It was out of control multiple times. And like I said, do what you want in the community center. However, in the library, it was very awkward. It was another public spot. So when camp is in session, you already can't use the playgrounds. You can't use the basketball courts. There are multiple places. Essentially, the whole park gets closed down for camp. A grandmother came up last year and, spoke about this, and, the mayor and council said, hey, we're going to look into it. To my knowledge, it was never addressed. So now here's the library that, while it could be used by other people, parents, I don't think they felt comfortable with their kids there, because they were like walking in, walking right out. And multiple comments were made by other people, over the ensuing months. And my issue is, I'm going to be very honest. I took video. I took video because I sent it to the head of the library commission. I'm like, this is not okay. When property is being broken, when property is being disrespected like this is not okay. I know, this is why I'm remaking this video. I know Maria was trying to do something right. She was trying to help the town, okay? But the fact that, when she agreed, yeah, you can come, there was a different expectation. Coming and using the library and bringing 50 kids who were running around, throwing things, sitting in chairs upside down, jumping on couches is a totally different story. And I wanted to, I wanted to go to the library commission, and the library commission basically said we knew nothing about this when I went to them on it. Because I was like, look, the library has video, pull the library footage and see it for yourself. Um, so, I said, it is true, right? It's not misinformation. What Lori got up and said is 100% true because I witnessed it for myself and I gave very specific examples of things that happened. And, then it was like, oh, and I said the word feral was used. And I didn't want to say, even your counselors were calling them feral, right? Because, like I said, it was the counselors who were doing their job, right? It was the counselors who were actually working. But, all of a sudden, you can't use the word feral, that is so offensive, and to record kids. And no, you know what? When something is out of control, if you don't record it, if you don't take video of it, what is going to happen? The narrative is going to change. If I didn't have video of something, you would say, that didn't happen. That never happens. And that's a problem because there are things in this town that go on. And when possible, we try to handle them offline, right? If you weren't saying, hey, this is, that's misinformation, I wouldn't have gotten up and said anything. It wasn't, my kids weren't there, you know? I got up and I said something because this happens. And to say that that is misinformation is false, right? It did happen. It was uncomfortable for a lot of people. It continued to happen and it wasn't addressed. And you knew that it happens because at one point, as we're leaving, Joanna comes running in, all out of breath, covered in sweat, to talk about because she was told, I am assuming from one of the counselors, that they thought they broke a couch. Now, I'm not sure if the couch was broken beforehand or they were able to fix the couch. I do know that they broke the globe and one or two other things we were able to fix. But if you thought everything was okay, why did you come flying over from Pell Park? Right. The other thing is like, it's okay. Not everything needs to be perfect. People try their best. But don't try to create a narrative and try to put other people down or make it sound like they are lying when that is not the case. And that's something that really, really frustrates me. And that frustrates, I'm going to be, I don't care who the council person is up there. I don't care who the board of trustee is. I don't care if it's my sister. There is a false narrative that is being said and is being promoted. I am going to clarify it because just because you're up on the dais does not mean that what you're saying is true. And it was something, I'm constantly hearing on my page, people on the dais will straight up lie, say stuff that is crazy, and then I say something and I'll get that time wrong. And I'll get that time wrong because I got it from the borough website that was wrong, or because it's not on the borough website at all, and the information that was said, and there's stuff that I've copied verbatim from the mayor and council meeting. You can go back and you can listen to the tape, and they'll be like, "You're spreading false information," and I'm just like, "Stop, stop." That is my biggest thing. If there are true lies or there are true non-facts being said, it's a different story. But to try to twist a narrative when all we're doing is telling the truth, and it's not just me. It's it takes a village, right? I tell people if I'm saying something that's wrong, drop it in the comments, right? If I say, 65 to join the seniors, you have to be 60. Thanks, Teresa, put it down there. I said repair the fences instead of replace the fences. Thanks, Sean, drop it in the comments, right? Even when they were talking about the PSC&G thing, I don't know that I got that right. Drop it in the comments. So I just really think that as a whole, we need to be better about just being honest. And, it's nonsense. It's nonsense. We're talking about kids at a library. There's no reason to lie about kids at a library, right? With that said, I'm not going to be responding to any comments on this below. I do just want to make it very clear that our staff at the library is amazing. I don't hold them responsible in any way. I definitely don't hope that there's any, I don't expect to see any retaliation or anything like that to them, for basically doing their job and trying to make the best out of a bad situation that they were put in for trying to be nice people.